All right, we're up. What happened to my toolbox? Did I leave it outside? I have to go get it. That's weird. All right, well, whatever. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We've got the 660 here. I'm bring it up over here so I can see comments. It's Tuesday morning. I don't know how many people are going to show up, but we got to work on the intake on this because I filled it in with some JB Quick Weld, but yeah. Are we not up? We're up. Morning, Steve. Hey, Craig. Yeah. I'm just trying to bring this up here. Which for some reason I can't. That's weird. Oh, yep, here. Got it. Okay. Getting ready for bed, working nights. Oh, sorry, Craig. Go get some rest, dude. I don't think we're going to have all that big of a deal for a stream today. So I was actually able to get a little bit of aluminum foil in here. Trying this. Let's see if this actually works. Yeah. So I got the intake filled in. Cool. So I actually have an idea of how much I want to take and effectively add to the intake. So I'm going to put a ring in here. The ring gives me an even line. And now what I can do is I can take my Sharpie and hit it. And now I have a spot that say, okay, I want to grind all that away. So I can grind all the black away and have it be nice and even across. And the intake on this is a little bit narrow, so I'm going to widen it a little bit and square it. Excuse me. Okay, yeah. So now I can just get in there and widen it and square it. Yeah, I might need to take this a little further, but maybe not. This way, and make sure it's even this way too. That's looking much better. Now I might have way undercut this, which is fine. Can always come back. Do a little more. other thing I can do is I can take a look at my skirt width and see how far I'm. So I can go another millimeter or so on each side. Assuming this is the same skirt as the exhaust. But whatever. Here, let's bring this over here. You know what? Climaxes, that's not good. Hey, Bob. Okay, so let me show you guys what I'm doing here is. Right. So the corner up here, not that one, but this corner up here and that corner over there, I like to be nice and square. I didn't get them quite square. But basically this edge here needs to be super flat and then square. And it almost doesn't matter what's going on with the lower, or if you do it this way, upper, but whatever. So with this edge here, it doesn't matter as long as you're not going to dip a ring end into this spot. If a ring end comes in here, you got a problem. Hey, Jordy. So now I've got a little bit of like JB Weld leakage here, so I'm trying to decide how to deal with that. Maybe just use the emery. Make it easy. And I'll run a Scotch-Brite wheel in there at some point, but if I get the timing on this okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably call it a day on this head here. And then move on to something else. What am I doing? Didn't want to put that in there. I want to put the emery in there. some 50 grit here and go into the lowers. That looks pretty good, actually. Wish I could make that a little more crisp. Like, it just doesn't look crisp. We'll get it. It's gonna happen one way or another. Zerk Benson, what's he doing? Well, you can ask me. What are you doing? This is a Stihl 660 cylinder head chainsaw, and I'm porting it. Basically, I'm porting, polishing, that type of thing. Get a little more pop out of it would be nice, you know. Yeah, this is actually out of a Stihl 660, which is somewhere around 90 cc. So it's a good sized chainsaw. It's bigger. It's generally a bigger saw than your average homeowner is going to own. So to give you an idea for size, this is 54 millimeter bore. I think a Stihl 090 has somewhere around 60 millimeter bore, maybe bigger, 66. I forget. I'm pretty sure a Husky 3120 is a 60 millimeter bore, or at least somewhere in there. My 394s are 56 millimeter bore, so they do definitely get bigger even. So right now I'm just polishing some rough stuff, that's all. And there are all kinds of different tools to do this. This just happens to be a drywall screw on the end of a pencil attachment for a cordless Dremel, but there's all kinds of ways to do this. If you like really nice tools, CC Specialty has pretty much the tools for chainsaw porting. Really pretty much any type of engine porting, but I think because they have the right angle attachments essentially for, I believe, Fordham, then they have kind of the lock on that. Hey, Marshall. I'm just giving the lowers a quick going over here with some 50 grit. And even the 50 grit's not doing exactly what I need, but you just peel off a little bit extra, you know, and just keep going. For now, that'll be fine there. So actually, you can see, so I filled in the intake here. So I added some material actually. This is JB Quick Weld, because for all intents and purposes, if you have an intake that's too far down, then the opening during the cycle of up and down, the opening under the piston has too long of a duration, which means you're trying to take too big of a gulp, essentially. So if you want to take a very quick, big gulp of air and fuel, but if you try to take too big of one, then there's only so much volume, essentially, that you can fill, so it becomes inefficient. Best way that I can explain that, I am not an expert on porting theory. Not me. I know a few things about it. And I generally have a good idea as to where I want to be as far as what the numbers say. I have the straight pencil here, and I've got another, this is actually a straight, it's a Dental Lab handpiece, in case you want something a little different for whatever reason. So I can go a little wider here. I like nice, wide, crisp, flat intake. A saw is a valve, essentially. It's okay, Craig. Get some rest, buddy. Well, you can just play around with this stuff for days, but eventually make yourself nuts. Pretty good. Square sides. This corner is square and that corner. As square as I can get them. You can make them utterly square if you had the right tools. Because you want as wide of an opening as possible to open as soon as possible and to close as soon as possible. And that way you have a very precise opening and closing. Crisp opening and closing. No, this is old tool, Tom. Yeah, that looks nice. Even, you want even. Again, you can just play with this forever. So, whatever you want to do, but I'm not going to play with this forever. All right, so next step, I need finer sandpaper. Will do. Again, you can go whatever grit you want for whatever purpose you want. Some people like all this stuff rough anyway, and I think there's probably a case for that. Especially the intake. Some guys like to highly polish the exhaust. There's at least some case for that, but there's also a case for leaving it rough. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just here to give you a little bit of ambition to go for this yourself. I don't normally take it any more than 220 on the exhaust. It ain't perfect, but now on the exhaust, you want to make sure you have rounded edges. So you got to have edges that are rounded this way and that way. Otherwise, you'll hook a ring. Hey, Raymond. So just polishing up this 660 head. What I got to see is I got to see where the intake's at. Let me give this a quick rinse, and then we'll check and see where the intake timing ended up after I filled it in. So yeah, Raymond, just so you know, if this is your first time here, welcome. You can certainly ask questions, preferably chainsaw related, of course. And basically, I do these live things for two reasons. One, because I hate editing. I can't stand editing. I just don't want to do that anymore. But also because I get a huge kick out of it. Because you guys have all kinds of fun asking questions, talking to each other, you know, and as it turns out, you guys can learn as much from each other as you can from me. It ends up being kind of like a live forum, which I get just a huge kick out of. So please enjoy. And it really is no fun without the interaction. I mean, I hear myself talk all the time, so, you know, don't need more of that. So, where did we end up on the intake? There. Like 95. $96, $97, somewhere around there. That's fine. Let me make sure that it's balanced. Funny. $96, $97. Somewhere in there. Okay, so it's balanced. So don't know what it's hitting. looks like it's actually hitting the intake, so I got to go in there and polish that. So now, somewhere around there is where it's closing, which is more like 65. So I've got a ways to go. Yeah, I didn't cut nearly enough out of the intake. That's fine. So now I can set a new line here. Just get the ring again. Piston. Morning, Roadrunner. So I've got a ring in there, and the ring just I press down. This is a guess, okay, as to where to go, but I have an idea of how much I want to take off. You can obviously get way more exact than this, but uh, the ring gives me a line that's even left to right, and now I have my Sharpie, so I know basically how far I want to cut. You can use that reference line any way you like. You can cut to the bottom of it, to the top of it, to the middle of it, whatever you feel like. Also, I have my reference here for skirt width, so I have an idea of I can probably still go a little bit wider if I want to. So, let's go. And you can make this nice and square again because the rings only pass it once. These corners, boom, boom, you can make nice and square. These two down here is a little different. Try not to touch them because one of the rings might have a ring end that goes in that area, no, which is no good. Defect here in my JB weld. Have to fix that later. Profit, what's going on? Just doing the intake here on the 660, and I think once I'm done with this, then we're just gonna go to the 262 that I have sitting around. We're gonna put that together, hopefully. Make sure it's even here. You know, so the floor is even as opposed to that type of thing. All right, let's have a look. Scotch-Brite thing too, just for giggles. For better or for worse, there's a little defect there I'll take care of. But this side's pretty good. Right here, that corner. See how nice and crisp that corner is? Pretty good. Okay. Check the timing numbers. Okay. Okay, that's smooth. Let's check on the, just want to check on the balance again here. That way, click back. That's about 34, 35. That's about, yeah, that's no good. Oh, I see where it's going apart. Here. All you got to do is balance your wheel, essentially. Let's bring this back to what looks like top dead center. Okay, yeah, that's correct. All right, that's fine. This is just a piece of aluminum I stick in here as a very positive stop. That's about 45. That's about 45 as well. Close enough. So what am I seeing here now for numbers? Right about there. And that's 83, which is fine. And that's 83, which is also fine. So I'm not going to touch that anymore. Okay. What happened to the exhaust here? Still 97. 97. That's fine. Okay. So yeah, William, we got 97, 83 on the intake. The 97, 80, 83, 84 on the intake, somewhere around there. And I guess I didn't check what the transfers came out to. $90, $100, $110, $120, $126. Is that where you wanted them? $126? Looks about right. The problem we got now is that the squish is so tight that I think I need to loosen that up just a little bit. That says 19. Aha. It's not tight. Hang on. So I'm measuring the distance between the top of the piston and the cylinder. Yeah, that's like 17. Almost 16 thousandths. It's a little too tight. And this is the thicker gasket. So I'd like to run the thinner metal gasket if I could, which means that I really need to make a little bit of room in the head, which means I need a hair more machining done. So we're going to call this $97.80. Let's write it on here. $97,126.83. So this goes back to North Carolina. I'm going to have Mike Shetley take just a hair more out of the squish band because it's just a little bit too tight. And this gasket is like 20 thousandths. But this one, which is like the typical metal 660 gasket. Where's my micrometer? It's here. That's 16 thousandths. So we have, so the difference is 4, and the difference is 4. So I need like 8 thousandths taken out of, 8 thousandths taken out of the band. Now I get to put this aside. Now that I have my number, this really is like more or less good at this point. So now it's time to work on something else. We've got a 262 to work on here. I was supposed to work on this with Mason, but I happen to have time now. So I might as well do it now. Let's see if we can get this cleaned up a little bit. I'll work on a 262. Why not? You need that. Yeah, it's funny. Where did my toolbox go? I gotta go find my toolbox. Tell you what, let me go run and find my toolbox. I'll be back. I don't know what the heck happened to that thing. Alright, I found it. Better you guys don't ask. Okay. Oh, 262. Yep. I'm back. 262. Some of this, which I don't need right now. Okay. 2. So 262 crankcases. We've got the positioning pins. Actually, should remove those. Grab, gentle pull. All right. The dip tube is here. That's fine. Just need to clean them up. Now, there's a few ways you can do this. My understanding of this particular saw is that this is intended to be more or less stock. This is not supposed to be something that's hot rodded. So we will do what we can here to make it good, but not too hot. You know. So let's get some Scotch-Brite. Grinding bucket go. I just like to get these down to bare metal. Just shine it up a little bit. What you can do is get a granite block and put some sandpaper on there and just take it to like 400 grit, and then you know it's flat. want to put gouges in anything. That's terrible. So next, I like the Stihl wheels for going in and cleaning out the bearing pockets. Get rid of my arbor here. I get these Stihl brushes. You just get them on eBay. You get an assortment. They're pretty inexpensive. There we go. So what do you guys think? Pretty good? Pretty good. So next thing is bearings. And bearings, let me give this a quick wash. And we'll get some of the stuff out of the ultrasonic. And then we're going to work on getting the bearings in here. And that's a little tricky on this because this saw, the bearing can just slide all the way through here either way, and that's not the best, obviously. So we got to get that figured. Let me wash these. Be right back. I'm not going for a concours level build here, but we're going to make this certainly very runnable and doable. Brake cleaner out. Make sure all these are cleaned and degreased surfaces. Most important is the crankcase here. Where the area around the crank. And the seals. Needs to be nice and clean. Pretty relaxing. Oh, good. Hopefully you're sitting back and enjoying a root beer or something. Always nice to watch somebody else work. My neighbor always tells me he can watch hard work all day. Is the focus okay? Can everybody see everything okay? Hear me okay? So the bearing here is easy. Pull it in, go. You're good. But the bearing here, a little harder. Let me go. I need to get the oil pump and the other stuff that's actually in the ultrasonic right now. So let me go quickly grab that. That is what we need to put bearings in. The one thing we absolutely need is the seal holder for the flywheel side. Now, I don't know why they designed this like this. This doesn't make any sense. It's a funky seal holder or whatever. And this one's the plastic one, so this one's not as desirable as the metal one, but as a part, but they don't make the metal ones anymore. They make the plastic ones. So, let's play. Got a big socket, and I'm going to knock out the seal here. There we go. Hey, Kevin. Welcome. This seal actually doesn't feel too bad. That's not too bad. Let me throw it out anyway. The other unique thing about this is you've got this O-ring, which is indeed a very special O-ring. It's not proprietary. They want you to think it is, but it's not. So we're going to go over that here in a minute. Well, Kevin, I think this type of thing really shows people what it actually takes to do a job like this. And, you know, or what it takes me, you know, I can't speak to other people, but I can tell you that if anybody's taking it to a higher level of detail than this, then they're guaranteed not making any money. Um, I just don't see it, you know what I mean? And I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this so I can hang out with you guys. You know, I do get some compensation if you guys go to that link that Bob just posted. Thank you, Bob. Or Bob posted. Did you post the link earlier? Yeah, you did. You posted the link earlier. Or if people contact me, they want to see, because I'm going to put this together with the crank tools that I made. And if anybody wants crank tools, then they can contact me. And so that I do make money off of. But as a general thing, this I could care less. I do actually get a kick out of hanging out with you guys. That's all. I love the interaction stuff. It's just so much more fun to do this sort of thing like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece and I'm actually going to install it temporarily on the flywheel side here. Thanks, Bob. So this is going to act as a stop. No seals, no O-rings, nothing in here. It's all bare. And I'm just going to use this as a stop for the bearing. Now, since this is plastic, you've kind of got a problem here as far as using heat to put the bearing in. Which is why I'm not going to do that. And I'll show you guys that too. Out of Q-tips. A little bit of anti-seize. So there's a few ways you can pull bearings in. You can do it with a press. You can do it by heating this up and dropping the bearing in. I'm going to do it cold here. And there are plenty of people that want to argue that, but we're just going to do it cold anyway. So these are Nachi 6202s. Nothing really special, just nice bearings. Now, you don't want to heave-ho this in. But you do want to make sure it's kind of set and it's fairly square. And only hit the outer race, not the inner. So now I've got something very cheap and simple. Just threaded rod. That's all this is. It's nothing exciting. I like my fender washers, the big washers. So here, we're going to pull this. Let's see what fits. Perfect. We need to go directly up against the nylon, essentially. Where'd the other nut go? So I've effectively created a press, and we'll pull that bearing in at room temperature, completely safe. And if you feel like it, if you're being impatient, you hit it with the impact. Socket's not quite deep enough. We'll go from this side. Now essentially the bearing is pulled in as far as it'll go against the nylon. Show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So the bearing's in, and it's fully up against the nylon, against the seal. Against the seal holder, excuse me. The seal holder. Pull the seal holder off now, because now we have that positioned. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to leave that in there. That way that bearing doesn't have a tendency to move. I'll leave that in there for the moment. We do have to pull it back out and back in, but we'll get there. Alright, let's do this side. This is a little more straightforward because there's already a stop for the bearing. Same deal. I like a little bit of anti-seize on here. I've had some people give me some very serious comment. Why are you doing that? You're going to spin the bearing. No, you're not. If the bearing spins, there's a different reason. This just helps make it a little smoother going in. Now you can get the Nachi bearings open or sealed or shielded. Kind of whatever you want, and then just pop the seals or shields out and make it open anyway. Had a comment on that just the other day, and yeah, you want them to be open, that way they get lubricated by the fuel mix. So basically, same deal here. If for whatever reason you notice the bearing going cockeyed, just stop, back it off, and set it a little more with the hammer. You don't want to insert it with the hammer. That's it. Done. It's all the way home. Ta-da! Now you can put your bearing. It's just half-inch threaded rod, some nuts, and some washers. That's all this is. Nothing fancy. It doesn't need. You can buy fancy. It doesn't need to be fancy in any way, shape, or form. There. I've used that thing for tons of bearings. So now we need the crank. seals and whatever else we got. All right, let's look here. So you can inspect the crank and make sure it's good. A little bit of brake cleaner never hurts. Scotch-Brite too. That's fine. The general thing, I like to pull the PTO side in first. So you can see how this does not, you're not going to be able to press that in by hand. So you need tools. Well, guess what? I've got tools. I'm going to pull some fresh off the line here. So for the tools, we need, first thing is a piece of threaded rod with a specific end to it. So I've got a set of these that I sell, and you can do a very significant amount of this, the usual saws that guys are rebuilding today. Put it in loosey-goosey. Does not have to be tight in any way, shape, or form. Just get, you know, an adequate number of threads on there. Next, you need a sleeve. Just grab one over here. So, large sleeve. Put it on. And this goes right to the inner race of the bearing. So you're only pulling the crank through the inner race of the bearing, which means there's no lateral forces on the crank. And we're all going to do this at room temperature too. So now, put your handle in. This is just a convenience, really. All the way in, back it off a half a turn or so. Again, we want all this stuff to be, you know, easy and loosey-goosey, and just nothing here should be difficult. Washer and nut. Nothing here should be difficult. Don't make it difficult. Make it easy. More effort to make things easy. But, well worth it. I just need to find my ratchet. Here we go. 1 1/8" ratchet. So, if you watch here, this is just so easy. So easy. Pull it down. Just like that. If you want, you can put some oil on there. You know, we can put just a quick drop of oil on the crankshaft here, just to make it a little easier. But it should take almost no effort at all. Crank's just going to get sucked right into the bearing there. I'm going to pull this all the way to the PTO side, because the bearing's as far as it'll go, and then the crank's going to be as far as it'll go. And good as this gets. You practically do this in midair. Well, see? You can do this with an impact if you want. I probably wouldn't because, again, the sleeve's aluminum, but if you're really in a hurry, you know. You can feel it. It goes down. That's it. That's all that it needs. Now, I don't know if Craig's still watching, but Craig Timmons likes to leave this on while you do the other side, which you certainly can do. So the other side here, now we have to look for things like sealants. Let's get rid of this. We also need screws and bolts and that type of thing. So you can lay out your case bolts. The extra long ones are the dog bolts. Check and see how many case bolts you have. Do I have all my case bolts? Back, and I forget which one that is, but I'll improvise. I think it don't really matter, but whatever. Position pins, very important. I will need that in a minute. Okay, so I've got the rear one we're going to ignore for the moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the medium length, and 2 of the longer ones. So we're good. Okay, so we have the bolts. So now we can actually hit these with blue Loctite. Then grab our 3-bond. Well, before you do that, make sure you actually have a gasket. I'm pretty sure you do, because so here's the gasket set. That looks right. Make sure. Yep. Okay. So now I'll hit this with 3-bond. I like to do flywheel side first. You don't necessarily need it. Okay. can also use the Loctite 518 for this sort of thing. The difference is the 518 you have to let it set like overnight. You cannot go and run it immediately. With the 1184, you're more likely to be able to run it pretty quick because it tacks up fast. You can also put it on the gasket if you really feel ambitious like that. That's fine too. Nice thing about Loctite 518 is it's anaerobic, which means that you're less likely to bug or something. It'll just wash away later. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. So, your positioning pins go in. Wrong spot. And good. And the moment of truth. We'll see the whole thing goes together here. You know? Let me do a little bit more 1184 in one spot. So the nice thing about the positioning pins here is you can just put the gasket right over the positioning pins. And theoretically, the 1184 is basically already tacked for you, so you don't have to worry about it going everywhere. that better? Are we good? Funny, it looks funny on my screen, but it looks clear on the other. Hang on. Oh, it's a quality issue. There. Up your quality, Bob. Try to go to 720p or 1080. Yeah, that looks better. So yeah, nice thing about the 1184, if you need to go take a phone call, take a phone call. It's not a big deal, you know. I'm going to put this together. And now I need a flywheel side rod. You want M8 by 1, pointing out right hand for this. This one happens to be M10 by 1.5 left hand. Yeah, it's not a focus issue, it's a quality issue. So anyway, small sleeve goes on. Small handle to the small rod. Do not washers. Not in washer. Just start pulling it together. Just like that. And eventually you get to a point where you really desperately need to make sure those positioning pins are lining up. So you make sure they're in there, it's in there. Just, like I said, real gentle, pull it on down. And you can double check, you can make sure that there's nothing in the way, like so, yep. You can squeeze it here, squeeze it there, make sure your positioning pins are good. And then look around and make sure like there's nothing in the way, like an oil hose, or, you know, whatever. There's all kinds of stuff that you can. That's it. And then what you do is now you can actually put your bolts in here. These are in the ultrasonic, but still make sure the heads are pretty clean. Yeah, 7 people. Who's here? Everybody's being quiet. I know, everybody's laying back and having a drink or something like that, right? 10 o'clock in the morning. One, two, three, four, and then there's one that hides a little bit. This one over here, under the bar pad. Then you also have the dog. See, it just looks upside down to me, you know? That looks better. Does it fit? If somebody had it like this. Oh, it's gotta be. Like that. Okay. And the dog bolts, by the way, are case bolts, so there is that issue. Do be wary of that. I think everybody's asleep, though. I think I put everybody to sleep. Gonna have to look that up on the dog. What's right side up and down. The idea is not to impact these home. I want to get them in solid, and then I will do them by hand. And I really don't know which one is head bolt and which one is case bolt. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a bolt from over here. definitely too short. It's just an M5. I'll find an M5 here. We can all tension these down. Gentle like. Okay, now we can undo these. Put all your stuff away here, essentially. Essentially, this is a kit that basically doesn't wear out, for all intents and purposes. I mean, you get so many uses out of this sort of stuff that even the aluminum sleeves. I have guys that probably have 50 or 100 builds on these. They're still using them. So it's not like this wears a whole lot. And even if it does, it's just a piece of aluminum. You know, no big deal at all. There you go. How's that? Now we go back and we're going to double triple check here. So this will be 262. So the biggest cylinder you can technically fit on here is a 262 cylinder. This is 257, 262, 261, 254. It all fits on this chassis, I believe. So let's get some seals in here. Seal. So these are OEM seals and the OEM O-ring. So easy thing, we'll do the seal on this side. Now, what I mean, I've seen, I think it's on these, like somehow the seal is not driven all the way home, but that doesn't make any sense to me because there's plenty of room. I don't see why you don't drive this flush. So I'm going to drive it flush. So essentially it's a 4mm deep seal. And you've got 5mm of depth. But you would have more than that because you're not going to run up against the inner race. Yeah, so you've essentially got 5mm of depth. There's no point to not putting this. This is not the 266, it's 262. Did I write the title wrong? .266, 268, 272, old 61 is a different set of cases. How do I know I recessed the right amount? I measure. So what I'm doing, I want to know like where this rubber piece is going to run into the inner race. If you set it too far, then the rubber part of the seal is going to be rubbing against the inner race all the time, which is probably not a good thing. But this is essentially a 4mm thick seal, and you have 5mm of case thickness here, essentially before you get to the inner race. So I just don't see why you wouldn't recess this to flush, essentially. So I've got, this is a seal installer. They're very nice. They're very cheap from Husqvarna. And this takes the place of the what I call my Coke can trick. But this gets the seal over the lip on the crank without puckering the seal and prolapsing the bearing. So you can't actually use these as seal drivers. I don't recommend it, but I'm going to do it because I've got plenty. So this, I believe, is an extremely common seal. Just drive this down to flush. It's not a problem. That's it. Perfect. Now this one's a bit of a different cookie, but let's play with this one a little bit. So this has a seal holder, and so everything here has to do with the seal holder. So if you overdrive the seal, you must remove it. Yes. So don't do that. It's a very superstitious thing. So here there's a couple things we have to do. We have to put the O-ring in, and deal with the seal. Let's deal with the seal first. So I'm going to put some Loctite 518 on this anyway. The thing is, Loctite 518 is not a good sealer against plastic, but it's something here. Yeah, basically it's impossible to do without damage. Even if you don't damage it visibly, you still gonna trust it? Like I said, it's a superstitious thing. So you can just tap this in with the hammer here. Now your seal is installed. So let's go to this. This is an OEM O-ring. Let's look at it. I'm going to look at it close here because this is one of those things that drives me crazy. I need my 262 parts, which are in here somewhere. I think. They're not outside my shed. Oh my god. I left them with Mike. Mike has all my 262 parts. It's okay. It's fine. So I have another video that anybody can go back and look at. The of Husqvarna O-ring substitutions, and this O-ring is in there as far as a substitutable O-ring. You do not have to pay $5 for this stupid O-ring. You can get the same darn thing for a whole lot less. You put the O-ring in here nice and easy. Like a little bit of 518 on here too, it's fine. So there you have it. Now on here, all you got to do is basically just nicely, very nicely, very gently seat that. One, two, three. Just hold the seal holder. That's all they do. So I don't know why there's like a double rubber thing here. Why would there be two chunks of rubber, the O-ring and the seal? I don't know why they would do that. Why would they just not cast in basically the same thing on the other, they had on the other side? That's it. Don't do anymore. I don't have a meteor piston. So the next thing I need a meteor piston so I can actually check squish and then probably send the head down to Mike Shetley. That's what I got to do. So thanks, Bob. Appreciate the link there. Yeah, so Bob just posted the link on substituting O-rings. So if anybody wants to check that out, I do find that interesting that you can, spend $8 and get 50 O-rings as opposed to $4 or $5 and get one. I think Husky made a mistake there. If they made them available, and, I don't mind paying premium, but 100x markup. There you have that. Hey, Brian. 61 bottom end. Yeah, go ahead. Go for it. Brian just texted me and told him I was live, so he showed up, which is good. Yeah, if you got a question, definitely. That way everybody can benefit rather than one-on-one stuff. Not sure if the crank is centered. So the 61, well, on a lot of them it doesn't really matter whether the crank is centered or not. The only one that well, is the crank rubbing. If the crank is rubbing on the crankcase on one of the bosses, that's bad. The only time I've seen that is when I actually had a crank from a 372. Yeah, if it's not rubbing, don't worry about it. But I had a crank from a 372 that was rubbing because the crank itself had actually splayed out on the pin. It had over revved and had moved on the pin. And I think I put the case together like twice and couldn't figure it out until I eventually came to that conclusion. It was weird. Well, but it doesn't matter because there's play. Look at the side to side play in the rod. So it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't matter. If you want the crank to be centered, that's fine. Especially if there's room to pull it one way or another, but there might not be. That's the other thing is. Let me show you. So, yeah, let's look at this. So So here, this is a 394 crank, but there's actually a. Let's see if I can focus a little better. Yeah, there's a lip right here. So if this sits up against the inner race of the bearing, which it should, then there's this lip here, which prevents this from rubbing against the boss, right? But if everything's together and both bearings are tight up against here, then you're not going to get any more centered. Is there room to center it? I've never done a 272 where there's room to center it. Also, when you pulled the bearings in, yeah, you can send me a picture. But also, when you pulled the bearings in, did you pull the PTO bearing up against the oiler? You have to go back to my other videos doing that type of chassis, doing like the 272 stuff to actually see the process there, um, and see that, like this one. So on this one, when I pulled the flywheel side bearing in, I pulled it up against the stop. On the 272 or 61, the PTO side has no stop for the bearing except for the oiler. So you put the oiler in, you pull the bearing in, you pull the oiler off, you do all your seal stuff, put the oiler back, you know. But the bearings have got to be in the right spot in order to get things centered. So this one, when I did this today, I did the PTO side first. I pulled it all the way as far as I could to the PTO side. The PTO bearing was as far to the PTO side as it could possibly be driven also. So by default, then it has got to fit on the other side, or else something else is terribly wrong. You know what I mean? So on the 272 or the 61, if you have a PTO bearing that can slide infinitely this way, with the exception of the oiler being the stop, then the first thing you have to do is get it in position against the oiler. Then you pull the crank through, and now the crank will be positioned appropriately this way, or at least it'll be positioned well enough that it's not going to rub on anything. Gordy B, don't have a lot of emails. So does anybody have any questions about that? I mean, Brian's going to send me a picture and see if there's something actually wrong, but there's probably nothing really wrong. No, there's nothing wrong with that. Although it does, okay. Which side am I looking at? It looks like there's some, Brian, it looks like there's some space on the flywheel side. If I'm right, yeah, that's the flywheel side. It looks like there's some space between the crank and the inner race of the bearing on the flywheel side, like you could pull it a little further that way. It almost looks like the PTO bearing is driven a little bit too deep. Which one did you do first? It looks like you drove the PTO bearing too deep. Which you certainly can do on a 272 unless you use the oiler as a stop. You have got to use the oiler as a stop when you pull that bearing in. Yes, no, somebody left. Anybody have any other questions about this? Because this is, the fine topic. It's my neighbor. Hang on. Hey, you okay? I'm okay. I'm live on YouTube. What's up? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll be here. I don't think I'm going anywhere. So, okay. Thanks. Okay. So, it looks to me like the PTO bearing got driven a little bit too far. Again, the process there would be get the oiler in with no O-rings, no seal, no nothing. Pull the PTO bearing to the oiler. Get that way it's properly positioned. Then pull the crank into that essentially, and then that's properly positioned in the crankcase. It really doesn't have anything to do with centering. It has everything to do with getting the bearings in the correct spot first. Most Huskies don't need to be centered necessarily. The issue there is if the PTO bearing is too far to the PTO side, if you didn't drive it against the oiler, then you're going to try to put the oiler down and you're going to have an air leak because the oiler is not going to fully seat because the bearing will be preventing it from fully seating. That's a problem. I think ultimately, so one of the instructions with the tools is position the bearings properly in the crankcases first and before you grab the tools. So I think that's what we're dealing with here. If the bearings are not properly positioned in the case halves, then the tool is not going to help you. You have to get the bearings properly positioned first. What else are we doing around here? I guess I'm waiting on a couple more pictures. Seals are in. this is good to go otherwise. Brian, the crank position doesn't look bad, but the concern is if you didn't position the PTO bearing properly, then you've got a problem. It's not about pulling the crank in, because we can pull the crank into a bearing. That's not a problem. Getting the bearings properly positioned is the issue. If the bearings are properly positioned, you got nothing to worry about. But I don't know. If I'm orienting myself in those pictures properly, which I think I am, I think there's a cutout, and I think that's on that cutout is towards the intake side, and if that's the case, then I'm my orientation on those crankcases is that I can't actually see the PTO bearing, which means it's recessed a little bit, which it means it might be a little bit too far recessed. I don't know though. If you put the oiler down properly and used it as a stop to pull in the bearing, then you're fine. But that oiler has an O-ring on it that is used as a seal, and if that is not down perfectly, then you're going to end up with an air leak on that thing. Hey, Ken. Put the 262 away for the moment. I do have at least one other thing to do. We can fiddle around with something else here if you guys want. Does involve more grinding. Pancakes, very nice. Sausage and peppers. Nice, Ken. Excellent. What am I doing now? Right. We actually have more JB Weld grinding to do. bet it does, Ken. One day. So I filled in kind of the lowers on this 350 thing here, on the riser block. Just going to try to have some fun with this. PTO said I did heat method with the oiler pulled in the other side. So did you pull it? Did you pull it to the PTO? It looks like you pulled to the PTO side first, and it looks like the bearing's a little too far to the PTO side. That's what it looks like to me. But as long as that oiler was fully seated, and then the bearing's fully seated up against the oiler, then it'll be fine. Did you pull the? There's an O-ring in the oiler. Did you pull the O-ring out first, or was the old O-ring still in there when you seated the oiler and then pulled the bearing in? Because the O-ring, if the O-ring is still in there and it's off kilter or something like that, and it puts it off, then the bearing's going to do something funny. Right. I don't think it needs to be centered, but what needs to happen is the oiler and PTO bearing need to be in proper position. That's the issue here. If that oiler is not in proper position, then you're gonna have an air leak because that O-ring's not gonna seat just right. See what I'm saying? You know? O-ring was out. Okay. So then you're fine. Don't worry about it. I need to have this going. It's going to be a problem. Is that really tiny section O-ring onto the oil? Can you pull the flywheel side while tapping PTO? You can. You can also just hit the whole thing with a heat gun and see what happens. You can put a little bit of pressure on the flywheel side and give the PTO a little tap if you want. Sure. Yeah, the flywheel side does look like it has room, Brian. Based on the photo, anyway. Yeah, for sure. It's up to you if you want to do that, but I think there is room, yeah. What about the side load on the bearing? You mean when you're recentering it? Um, Again, it's up to you. There are people that bang on cranks all the time, so I generally disagree with that. But if you want to go right nice and gentle, you certainly can. The other thing that you can do is, if you really want to put a little pressure on there without banging on it, get your case splitter and push on the bearing on the PTO side, and then use the crank tool to pull on the flywheel side and see if it moves. rotate the crank and look. And look for a stop. It looks to me like you're a millimeter short of the boss there. So it looks to me like you have room to center the crank. But there's Brian. The only concern here is whether or not that oiler will be fully seated. If it is, then there's no concern at all in centering the crank. You can center it if you want, at whatever risk it might be. But I can tell you that there's absolutely zero concern with leaving the crank where it is, with the exception of the oiler on the O-ring on the oiler. That's really the only concern here. You heard a pop when you put the oiler down? No, I didn't see that. Be safe, Ken. Yeah. Again, Brian, you've got two issues here. It's not just, there's at least two. The centering, which may or may not, okay, on this particular saw, if you want to be sure, then what's the easy thing to do here? I'm trying to think the easy thing to do here. Pull the oiler off, because I don't know about a pop. That doesn't sound good at all, at least when you're putting an oiler down. I don't know where that could have came from. But I think centering the crank is not a worry. That's not the worry. It's the centering the crank is not the problem. The problem is whether or not that oiler's in proper position. That's the problem. Take care, Bob. Thanks. Appreciate it. So yeah, does it look like there's room on the crank? Yes, it does. It looks like there's room. So, serious question: what's the benefit to centering it? And what's the risk? The risk is you're putting side load on the bearings, right? What's the benefit? I don't see any, except to satisfy, except to satisfy the OCD-ness of what you're doing. That's kind of basically where that lands. You know what I mean? So if we're going to put a 346 XP head on this one, the impulse line needs a little bit of room. So I gotta grind that. So if you need to put a 346 XP head, you need to grind an impulse channel. That's all. Okay. So, is it worth it to satisfy, whatever that is? I don't think so, but it's your build. It's up to you, you know? Personally, I'd make sure that that oiler is seated properly with the O-ring. That's I'd say a very big concern. Is the oiler seated properly? And I don't know the answer to that question. You have to figure that out. That would be my thought on it. This is just a test run. Just want to check this for squish and see what fits, you know. The skirts are getting in the way. Guess I should have checked that. Okay, well. Pull this apart. Really got to get rid of the skirts on this. That's not helping. So, ground on this, but I got to grind on this to kind of make it fit. That's the long and the short of that. I got to grind on the head anyway, but not necessarily planning on doing that today. Whatever, doesn't matter. We'll do it. Hey Andrew, welcome. Delivering firewood. Did you make any money, Andrew? Yeah. it's selling. Good. So I'm just taking back the skirts to where the gasket says to, essentially. There. Is that more likely to fit now? Yeah. Have I opened up windows? No, I've not. I've not gotten really into piston modification. So now essentially like, you can like look in here and see, okay, you know, what looks good, what doesn't, what needs to be ground, etc. So, whatever. I'm done grinding for the day. I'm good. I've done enough grinding. Let's do this. Maybe I'll be on later. I don't know. I need to go take a break. So yeah, Brian, I've not opened up Windows, no, on the 272 pistons. Yeah, piston modification, just I have not gotten into a lot. I'm sure you can get in there and kind of fiddle around with that sort of stuff, but I have not. Not yet. Anyway, let me go. I gotta run. I will see everybody later. We're gonna. This was actually Brian's 346, which will be the head will be combined with Buck's 350, and we're working on that right now. It's just there's a lot of detail work I'm doing. So I will get back to everybody later if I can. If not, hopefully I'll be on tomorrow, and we'll see you guys, and we'll work on something else. So I gotta run, and we'll talk to you guys later. Okay? Thanks very much, and you guys have a great one. Bye. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.